Have you ever had a moment of trying to recall an old TV show that you just cannot find? One that you found incredibly memorable, but the title has slipped your mind? I'm sure at least a few members of my audience have had similar experiences with the works put out by Toonami back in the day. That is exactly what the game MOHRTA feels like. A lost Toonami product that got lost to the days of VHS. Being brought to us by Scumhead and Osio, MOHRTA is an FPS that manages to strike so many chords. I mean, you start it up, you see that wrist, and the rather boring environment, and you're thinking that this game is just okay at best. But after the short tutorial, you're thrust into a town straight out of Samurai Jack. But before getting to the gameplay, what's the context? Well, you're a Hayward, Gen 7, a corpse brought back in armor. Basically, you're Gray Fox from Metal Gear Solid 1. Your mission is to traverse the various realms in search of a Gen 1 Hayward called Avlan. He's suspected to have been responsible for a realm known only as the Great Strange, which is expanding at an alarming rate. So with sword and pistol, our Hayward sets out to a mining village. This is where the demo starts. Finding the town ransacked and the guards wiped out, it's a pretty solid setting. Not much is interactable, but enough is shootable and there's some secrets to find. Admittedly, the secrets aren't the most difficult though to happen across. I will say that this level doesn't do the best job introducing the enemies. This is literally the first thing you see. The enemies here aren't even particularly super interesting. Basic chargers and ranged enemy. I will say that the NPC animals are kooky looking and fit the tone of the game's oddities. The first boss also isn't particularly great. He has moves and isn't just a charger, which is nice, though his AoE attack seems to hit behind him or closer to whichever direction the player is in. I will applaud the bits of environmental storytelling. While I can't say if the Romeo and Juliet thing is a joke, I did appreciate the pile of bodies in the boss room. It was implied that the raiders are cannibals when you first arrive. It may seem like I'm negative about the game, but hang in there. Before going forward, I'd like to point out the interesting aspects of your weaponry. You'll receive a handful of firearms over the course of this meaty demo, but unlike many indie shooters, this one only lets you hotkey 3 your weapons. Each one has a standard fire mode and an alternative which relies on a special meter under your health bar, of which you can refill via pickups from enemies and with a limited charge item. Also in the village you discover your mode of healing, a Fumo. Look at them, they're adorable. That's the thing about this game. It is dripping with style and character. The cool health bar, the stylized reloads, alternative actions, as well as an adorable Fumo. Also, I'm not sure if the sound effects are placeholders, but your revolver reload is a grand ping.
Alright, more pings, more reloads.
Okay.
More reloads, more pings.
Alright.
More pings, more dopamine.
But this area is over, and now we truly hit the meat of the demo. The Metro Nexus functions as a hub world, complete with all sorts of strange and bizarre things. Small creatures, big creatures, a creature who may or may not get this video age restricted. Here you can handle all your upgrade needs as well as the level selector. Akin to Demon Souls, the levels are broken up into various areas. It's a cool environment and chatting with the locals help with world building. I do hope that some sort of interactable minigame or something is added, in addition to the street looping you to the other side when you walk in one direction long enough. Admittedly, that might just be a personal request. A fair bit of my complaints about the initial level's combat is fixed with the first area you travel to in search of Avlan, a lush, overgrown graveyard to some ancient war. The bones of the dead have risen up, but that makes this great. From the goofy yet also haunting sounds to the increased enemy variety. The more dangerous enemies of this zone are only alerted when you wake them. These lion-like enemies charge up for a powerful leap at the player, while these bee-like enemies loose spikes in 3 directions. When I say my complaints are largely remedied, I'm not kidding. As this demo goes on, you encounter more and more varieties of enemies, bug bug-like enemies that burrow towards you, mosquitoes that thrust at you, and the bosses simply improve. While some aspects can come off a bit stiff, the duel you have with a fellow Hayward is excellent. She employs various attacks from melees to a handful of different gun types. Yes, the game manages to have engaging boss patterns and movesets. They aren't simple bullet sponges, some even have extra challenge, like when you take on this giant skeleton. The fight limits you to a narrow line, so you must jump and dash around his attacks. An engaging fight with a Queen's bodyguard has him using area denial attacks while you struggle not to fall off the arena. They're creative, and that's what this game excels at. I know some relate the game to Dark Souls, and I did to old school Toonami, but I must also say the environments remind me a little of Spyro. They're just fun to explore, not super complex, but I did have a bit of joy when finding upgrade materials or shortcuts. A ladder is rather simple, but finding a large moth critter to transport you is great. I will say work on the God Race. Now, some of the features were trimmed back by the time I got to the demo. So you have this bird creature serving as a flashlight. Originally, it flew around on its own, but now it's a simple light around the player. I'm not sure how I feel on this. One is more creative, but the other has less problems. Of course, I also prefer OG Doom 3 flashlight. What is it with gamers and flashlight discussions? I will say that when I got to the beetle boss fight, it proved rather difficult, but with the materials I found, I was able to upgrade the surprisingly effective shotgun to devastate the enemy. I fear that could trivialize the enemies a bit, but that remains to be seen. I am curious if the weaponry will have more tangible upgrade tiers. Can I make this game's Needler just the Needler from Halo 2? As in the enemy suffers explosive damage after a moment? Can we dual wield that? Finally, I want to address something that caught me off guard. The initial zones don't set you up for it, but the game can take some slightly disturbing turns. Namely that one area you go through is called the Womb, and you're there to get womb keys. Nothing bad, just didn't expect it. Some of the screenshots that Dev has shown off give more of a horror vibe, so I'm excited to see what's to come. I highly suggest trying out the demo. If you have, let me know what you thought in the comments, and do you prefer the original version of the flashlight? I'll be keeping an eye on this project, but I think it's time I did some ashes to ashes.